Welcome to AP Bio with AP Playground. For most of you, this will be your first lesson. And if you'd like some more background on chemistry before starting this unit, we have another video to help with that. Today, we'll be covering topic 1.1, all about water. Main objectives today include learning about water and why it's essential to sustain life, as well as its different properties, including polarity and hydrogen bonds, and how that contributes to the reasons why life depends on water. College Board wants you to be able to use your knowledge of water and its properties to describe or model it with suggested scale 2A, visual representations, describe characteristics of a biological concept, process, or model represented visually. Let's talk about the structure of water. As I'm sure you know, the chemical formula for water is H2O, which means we've got one oxygen atom and two hydrogen atoms. And these are covalently bonded to each other. Now what that means is these atoms are sharing electrons with each other. If we look at the atomic structure of oxygen, its atomic number is 8, which means it's got 8 protons in the nucleus and 8 valence electrons. This leaves it 2 open spots on its valence shell, which the electron of a hydrogen atom can fill up, meaning we can fit a hydrogen atom right here and a hydrogen atom right there, leading to the structure of water. Now, oxygen is electronegative, and it's going to hog these electrons due to its size. So, if it wasn't electronegative, there would be one electron floating around this hydrogen, one here, and then the other 8 around the oxygen. But because it's electronegative, these electrons are going to be more frequently flowing in this area than they are around the hydrogens. This leads to a partial charge, where the oxygen will be more negative because it's got the electrons, so it'll have a partially negative charge, while the hydrogens will have a partially positive charge because they are losing some of the electrons. And this is what makes water a polar covalent molecule. Now, the partial charges within water lead to an attraction between the positive and negative sides. If I draw 2 water molecules here are my hydrogens, we can look at the different charges. The hydrogens are going to be positively charged, partially, while the oxygens are partially negatively charged. And because opposites attract, this negative oxygen is going to bond to the positive hydrogen. And what this bond is called is a hydrogen bond, because we're bonding to a hydrogen. And this bond, unlike covalent bond, is extremely weak. And one water molecule can bond to 4 others. 1 bond from each of its hydrogens and 2 from the oxygen. First up, we've got adhesion and cohesion. Now, cohesion is the linking of like molecules, in this case water to water. And due to the cohesion of water, we've got surface tension. So if I'm drawing the top of our pond or lake, and I'm filling it up with some water molecules, here we go, and they're going to be bonded together through those hydrogen bonds between the partially positive hydrogen, partially negative oxygen. Due to this wanting to be close together, wanting to stick together, this cohesion, there's going to be a small film forming on the top of water that's going to prevent it from being broken as easily. That's how some bugs can walk on water, and also if you fill a cup with water, that's why it won't overflow even if you overfill it just a little bit, because it's got this cohesion, it's got this sticking together of the water molecules. Additionally, we have adhesion, the linking of different molecules, such as water to glass. And this causes what's called a meniscus in beakers. If I draw a graduated cylinder here, the water is not going to form a straight line when it's filled up within the beaker. It's going to form a bit of a curve here because the water is attracted to the glass. It's going to stick to the glass and allows it to push up against gravity just a little bit. Additionally, it allows for plants to transport water against gravity through what's called transpiration. So over here in this picture, we have the sun beating down on this tree, on this plant, and it's going to cause the water to start to rise. Now, how the water is able to actually evaporate through the plant is through the xylem tube, where it sticks first to the xylem tube, It's going to stick to the xylem tube, and that's the adhesive part of it. And then it's going to be able to pull up other water molecules through cohesion. So essentially, through both adhesion and cohesion, water is able to evaporate from plants. Now, when you're not evaporating water from plants, this action is called capillary action. Next up, we've got high specific heat and high heat of vaporization. So the specific heat is the amount of heat energy needed to raise a gram of a substance by 1 degree Celsius. So if we have some ground here and we also have some water, it's going to take a lot more heat energy to raise the temperature of water than it will to raise the temperature of the ground, because water has a high specific heat. And the amount of high specific heat to raise the temperature of water is called a calorie. And now the reason this takes so long is due to the hydrogen bonds between water. Because when you have these water molecules that are bonded through hydrogen bonds, first the energy is used up to cleave these bonds before it can actually raise the temperature of the water. And this makes ocean temperatures more stable, which is good for the animals living in the oceans, and it's also good for the coastal cities because the temperature changes aren't as extreme. So basically, water is able to regulate temperature through this specific heat. The same applies to sweat. It's called evaporative cooling because when you've got this water on your skin while you're sweating, the energy is used up to break those bonds. So by the time there's actually enough energy to evaporate the water off your skin, it's going to release all that energy that it's been absorbing into those bonds, making you feel cooler. Water is also less dense as a solid than as a liquid. Generally, if you place the solid of a substance into its liquid form, it'll sink. However, when you place ice, the solid form of water, it floats. And that's because it's less dense than the water. So if we draw a pond, and it's filled with water, when it freezes over in the winter, all the ice is going to be at the top of the pond because it's less dense, so it'll float. This means that all the creatures living inside, such as this fish here, will be able to survive in the winter because they're not being smothered by ice. Lastly, water is a solvent, and it's an almost universal solvent. Now, a solvent is a substance that can dissolve other substances. So water is our solvent, and our solute is what's being dissolved. And the equation here is a solvent plus a solute is equal to the solution, or the product of this reaction. And water is going to be your solvent in most biological cases. Now, water can dissolve polar and ionic substances, so basically charged substances, which are also called hydrophilic, or water-loving. However, it cannot dissolve hydrophobic, water-hating, which are nonpolar and non-charged substances, which is why water is almost a universal solvent, but not completely. Now, a common example is through table salt, which is going to be our solute in this example, and it's sodium chloride. And the sodium ion, because the sodium ion is positively charged, while the chlorine ion is negatively charged. Because water is polar, it's got different charged sides, so the oxygen, the negative part, is going to be wanting to be near the sodium ion because it's negatively charged to the positively charged parts. Whereas on the chlorine ion, the hydrogen atoms are going to want to be closer to the negative chlorine ion. And what's going to happen is we're going to have water molecules surrounding both of these ions, but because they're surrounding them in opposite directions, what's eventually going to happen is that these two ions are going to split up. The bond between them is going to be cleaved. And that's why when you put salt in water, it's going to dissolve and create a salt solution. Here's a quick review. Water is polar. The oxygen atom is electronegative. It's hogging these electrons. That's going to cause water to form hydrogen bonds between the partially charged sides of the water molecules. This leads to various properties, including cohesion, attraction between water molecules, and adhesion, attraction between water and other molecules. This is also going to lead to high specific heat, which allows for water to regulate temperatures. The density of water as a solid is lower than the density of water as a liquid, meaning ice floats. And lastly, water is an almost universal solvent, which means it can dissolve any charged or polar substances. I hope this was helpful, and next up we're going to be going to 1.2, talking all about carbon.